She had already served her country with everything she had, but when she came back and filed for VA disability, the government told her no. Then it told her no again, and again, 3 times. She opened that letter expecting recognition, support, and compensation. And 3 times, she got nothing but denial. Most people would have stopped right there. Some might have given up completely, thinking the system was too complicated or stacked against them. But not her. What she did next wasn't loud or dramatic, but it changed everything. Because hidden inside a dry stack of documents and policies was a strategy few veterans ever get told about. And once she discovered it, she didn't just appeal, she won full VA compensation. If you've ever filed a claim or been denied or are still waiting for the support you earned, this story might hit a little too close to home, because what happened to her isn't rare. In fact, it's a quiet struggle happening to thousands of veterans across the country, fighting for benefits in a system that doesn't always play fair. But this story isn't about frustration. It's about what happens when you finally learn how to fight smart. So stick around, because we're going to break down exactly what she did, step by step. And more importantly, how you can use the same strategy to turn your next denial into a life-changing win. It started the way it does for so many others, with pain, paperwork, and a quiet hope that someone would listen. After leaving the service, she noticed the symptoms right away. Back pain that didn't go away, constant headaches, sleep that never felt restful. She knew something wasn't right, and deep down, she suspected it was tied to her time in uniform. So, like she was told to, she filed a VA disability claim. She gathered what she thought they needed: her service records, a note from her doctor, a few details about her symptoms, and waited. Weeks passed, then months, and when the envelope finally arrived, it carried just one sentence that crushed her: "Your claim has been denied." At first, she assumed it was a mistake. Maybe something got lost. Maybe someone didn't read it carefully. So she filed again, this time with a bit more documentation. She added her deployment orders, a note from a therapist, and even asked a friend from her unit to write a statement. But the second time, the answer was the same: denied. She tried one more time, thinking third time's a charm. But charm didn't matter, because when that third denial came in, she realized something painful. The VA wasn't just asking for information. It was asking for a specific kind of evidence. The kind most veterans aren't told they need. And the kind that separates successful claims from those that get buried. That's when everything started to shift. Because instead of just reacting, she decided to investigate. And what she found next changed the entire course of her fight. The breakthrough came when she stumbled onto something called a Nexus letter. It wasn't mentioned in any of the VA's instructions. No one at the clinic had brought it up, but it kept appearing in forums, veteran groups, and quiet conversations between those who had successfully appealed their denials. A Nexus letter, she learned, is a medical opinion that connects a veteran's current condition to their military service. Not just a diagnosis, not just a record, but professionals' written explanation linking the two with clear, specific language. And that's where things clicked. She realized that the VA didn't just want to know she was hurting. They wanted proof that her service caused the pain. A diagnosis alone wasn't enough. She needed a trained medical provider to go on record, stating, "It is at least as likely as not that this veteran's condition is related to their service." Those exact words. That specific phrase. Without it, the VA could and often would dismiss the claim. It wasn't easy to get. She had to call around, ask uncomfortable questions, and sometimes pay out of pocket to find a doctor willing to help. But when she finally found one, a physician who took the time to review her records, understand her deployment history, and write the letter, it felt like the tide was turning. For the first time, her claim didn't just rest on her own words. It had expert backing. And suddenly, she wasn't just hoping they'd believe her. She was giving them a reason to. But having the Nexus letter was only part of the equation. What she did next made all the difference. And it's where most veterans unknowingly fall short. She didn't just submit the letter and wait. She rewrote her entire supporting statement, carefully aligning every sentence with the evidence. Instead of repeating her symptoms or telling the VA how she felt, she built a narrative that connected the dots. She laid it out step by step. First, She explained her military role in plain terms, what she did, where she was stationed, and what she was exposed to. Then, she described when and how her symptoms began, making sure to use dates that matched her service records. Finally, she directly referenced the Nexus letter, stating that a qualified medical provider had reviewed her case and confirmed the connection to her service. This wasn't about emotion. It was about clarity. The VA receives thousands of claims every year, many of which are vague, disorganized, or missing critical details. She made sure hers didn't fall into that trap. She created a timeline. She attached her service records, medical visits, and even photos from deployment, anything that could support the story she was telling. She included it. And then she did one more thing that most people never even consider. She added a short cover page at the front of her claim. One page, neatly typed, that listed the contents of her submission and what each item proved. It was professional. It was organized. And it showed the VA that she wasn't just another name in the system. She was prepared, informed, and determined to be heard. But even with everything in order, the Nexus letter, the supporting documents, the detailed narrative, she knew something else was missing. So she reached out for help, not from a random source, but from someone who had walked this path before, a veteran service officer. And this is where everything began to shift. Most people think a VSO just helps you file paperwork. But she learned quickly that the right officer can make or break your claim. The first one she spoke with gave vague advice and rushed through her file. It didn't sit right, so she kept looking. Eventually, she found someone who took the time to listen, really listen. He'd worked with hundreds of vets, knew the inside language of the VA, and more importantly, knew what red flags the system looked for. Together, they went over a claim with a fine-tooth comb. He spotted things she had overlooked, phrases that could be misinterpreted, gaps in her timeline that needed clarification, medical terms that needed stronger language. He helped her rewrite parts of her personal statement to make them more compelling, without sounding exaggerated. He even suggested she include lay statements, short written accounts from people who had seen her condition change over the years. Friends, family, old unit members. That kind of real-world perspective carries weight with reviewers. And there was something else the VSO did. He flagged her claim for a higher-level review. That small move placed her case in front of someone more experienced, someone with the authority to take a second look without having to restart the whole process. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a tactical decision that gave her claim a better shot. By the time they resubmitted the file, it was stronger in every way, tighter, clearer, and backed by both professional evidence and personal testimony. She hadn't just thrown papers at the VA. She had built a case. And it finally looked like someone was ready to listen. But getting everything lined up on paper didn't mean the battle was over. The waiting began again. Weeks turned into months. And with every passing day, she started to question if all the extra effort had made any difference. There were no updates, no calls, just silence. That's when doubt crept in, not just about the claim, but about herself. Maybe she wasn't injured enough. Maybe she didn't deserve it. Maybe they were right to deny her all along. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. And she reminded herself of something her VSO had said. The system isn't built to believe you. It's built to challenge you. That doesn't mean you're wrong. And that was the push she needed to keep going. Finally, after nearly 5 months of no word, she got the letter. She didn't open it right away. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing. After 3 denials, she almost couldn't bear to see it again. But this time it was different. Approved. Full disability compensation. Back pay. Service connection acknowledged. Everything she had fought for was finally recognized. She didn't cry right away. At first, it was just silence, a kind of stunned stillness. Then came the wave of relief, the release of years of frustration and quiet struggle. But even more than the financial help, what mattered most was the validation. Someone had listened. Someone had believed her. It didn't erase the years she went without help. It didn't undo the nights she couldn't sleep or the pain that still lingered. But it proved something important. She wasn't imagining things. She wasn't being dramatic. Her service had taken something from her. And now, finally, it was being acknowledged. And while the victory was hers, she knew she didn't get there alone. It was the support, the strategy, and the refusal to stay quiet that made the difference. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had some control over her future again. What she didn't expect, what no one really warns you about, is how much life changes after the win. Yes, the compensation made things easier. The back pay helped cover years of neglected bills and overdue expenses. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have to choose between medication and groceries. That mattered a lot, but what caught her off guard wasn't the financial relief. It was the emotional aftermath. You fight so hard for something for so long that when you finally get it, there's a strange kind of emptiness. Not because it wasn't worth it, but because it took so much out of you just to be heard. And then, almost immediately, the system gives you something else to worry about: reevaluations, letters about future exams, updates to your status, a quiet, unspoken message. We can still take this away. That looming possibility never really leaves you. Even after winning, there's always that voice in the back of your mind wondering if you'll have to fight again. She learned to hold on to every document, every medical update, every note from her doctors, because just like before, the burden of proof never really disappears. It just shifts. You don't stop defending your case. You just do it from a different starting point. But something inside her had changed too. She was no longer the woman who doubted herself. She had become someone who understood the system, who knew how to push back, and most importantly, someone who knew she was worth fighting for. And in the process, something else happened. Other veterans started coming to her. They had heard what she went through, what she overcame. They asked her what to do, who to call, what she would have done differently. And without planning to, she became a guide. Not an expert, not a lawyer, but someone who would walk through fire and could say, "I made it to the other side." You can too, because winning wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something more: advocacy, self-respect, and the power to help someone else rise through the same broken system she once thought she'd never escape. She had finally won. The letter confirming her full VA compensation had arrived. The numbers were clear, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. But the victory wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a whole new chapter, one she never saw coming. A few weeks after the approval, she got a call from a veteran she didn't know. He had heard about her success from a friend of a friend, someone who was still deep in the claims process and feeling hopeless. He asked her what she did differently, how she managed to break through the wall that had stopped him and so many others for years. She shared what she knew, the strategy she used, the documentation she didn't throw away, the words she repeated in her appeal letters. He listened, took notes, and thanked her. Then someone else reached out. Then another. Before long, she was spending her evenings on the phone, helping strangers understand how to request their C-file, how to write a personal statement that actually mattered, how to prove secondary conditions the VA had ignored for years. She didn't mean to become a mentor, but it happened naturally, and it gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. She started keeping folders for people, tracking their cases the way she once tracked her own. She read their denial letters and saw her own words reflected back at her. The patterns were always the same: vague justifications, missing evidence, rushed exams. But now, she could do something about it, not for herself, but for someone else. And then, something bigger happened. One of the veterans she helped got approved. Then another. They called her crying, thanking her, telling her that if it weren't for her, they would have given up. And every time, she felt a piece of herself healing. Not because the system was fixed, it wasn't, but because now, she wasn't facing it alone. Helping others didn't erase the struggle she went through, but it made it mean something. All the hours spent researching, the frustration, the waiting, the tears, none of it had been wasted, because now it was fuel. And she realized something powerful. Sometimes, the thing that nearly breaks you ends up becoming the thing that empowers you to lift others. And just like that, the woman who was once denied 3 times by the VA had become something the system never expected: unstoppable. Looking back at everything she went through, it's clear her battle wasn't just about paperwork or benefits. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her stability, and her voice in a system that so often silences people like her. She didn't get lucky. She didn't have special connections. She simply refused to give up, even when the VA told her no again and again. And through persistent strategy and learning to navigate the maze, she turned rejection into recognition. But her story doesn't end with compensation. That victory became a doorway, one that led her to helping others, to understanding just how broken the process really is, and to realizing that change doesn't come from waiting. It comes from learning the system better than the people who built it, and being willing to fight smarter, not just harder. If there's one lesson takeaway, it's this: getting denied isn't the end. It's often just a beginning. And the difference between those who lose hope and those who break through often comes down to one thing: information. Knowing what documents to keep, what language to use, what patterns to expect. It's what turns confusion into clarity and setbacks into stepping stones. So if you're watching this and you've been denied, or you're feeling like you're stuck in a loop where no one's listening, remember her story. You're not alone. There are strategies at work, tools that make a difference, and people who walked this road and made it through. Thank you for being here. If anything in this story resonated with you, if you're facing something similar or you know someone who is, drop a comment below and share one thing you learned. Let us know where you are in your journey. We read every comment, and your words matter more than you know. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story that just might change the way you see everything. We'll see you in the next one.